This talk is about taking setbacks and turning it into success. In entrepreneurship, we talk about, location, location, location. You talk about timing, and then you talk about the people you're involved in, and then you talk about persistence. And we've never really lacked persistence, but sometimes we should have maybe quit earlier and restarted later. But you just never know. Don't ever compete with Disney. Just a bad idea. But fortunately, we hit it out of the park on day one with Shipyard Export Deal, and then the gods blessed us with Pumpkinette. So we've been very, very fortunate. But I think at the end of the day, the biggest thing is the people that are involved in our company. And from day one, we've had some amazing people. And I think the biggest thing about everybody that's in hospitality, if you want to really have people accept you, you need to get involved in the community. If you don't give to them, they won't give to you. Having a beer with Fred is really about getting to people's passion and what makes them tick. Having a beer and having honest, frank, clear conversation that inspires our audience is what it's about.
We talked about my mom and dad, Agnes and Eli Forsley, who had 5 children, lived in Gray Park. Richard, Elizabeth, Alex, myself, and Candace. And so Gray Park was a special place. Russell School and the schools of Gray, whether it was Pennell or Russell, or for me, Pennell and Russell, were so special. I mean, in fact, I liked 2nd grade so much, I did it twice. So Mrs. O'Brien felt I wasn't getting ahead and learning, and she had me tested and found out I had dyslexia. So my mom and her found a tutor. So even though my mom had MS, she lived a full life, and so much of that was based on the friends and the families of Gray that, gave back to her because she gave to them. That being said, Gray Park was a special, special place to grow up.
So Federal Jack's Brew Pub and KBC has been in the location for 33 years in Kennebunk, Maine, on Kennebunkport Harbor. And originally, that was a kind of a failed real estate deal. Gordon Herchebys had invested in it. The investment failed. At the time, People Heritage Bank foreclosed on the whole deal, and Gordon asked me to see if I could help out. Well, I ended up buying the mortgage for us, and we had to go through a foreclosure process. Ended up with a vacant piece of property. So I met Richard and Eddie at Gritty McDuff's, and they introduced me to Alan Pugsley. Richard and Eddie decided they didn't want to put a Gritty's there, and then they got me to say, listen, maybe you could do it. I said, I don't want to do it, but we got the tenant that was there interested. It was a husband and wife team, and I went out and raised $300,000 to put the brewery in, and ultimately my vision and their vision clashed. And consequently, that group said, we're done, we're not doing this. And next thing you know, I was holding the bag, having raised this money. But ultimately, we created Shipyard Beer out of it. And today, Federal Jack's and Kennebunkport Brewing Company is, successful long-term. I would call it an institution. I started to drink the beer at Kennebunkport Brewing Company. I tried to enjoy it. I started to enjoy the restaurant business, the excitement of the nights and the excitement of being involved. And because of that, and because of the excitement of the community, and that made me want to dive in further and also, stay in the business and grow the business. And luckily, Alan Pugsley agreed to come on board on a handshake, became a partner, and we, as they say, the rest is history. It was the more people that drunk it, the more customers we got, the bigger we grew. And by '96, we were one of the fastest growing craft beers in the country. You can't let the failures get to you. You have to believe in yourself and believe in circumstances and find the right circumstances to make those work. So you have to practice and talk out and lean on people and others to help, because no one person can make a whole vision come true. And betting on those people, and you can make mistakes, but you got to write the course and keep moving. It's crazy to think about how quickly 30 years went. And the first time I walked into this room that we're sitting, it was in the middle of, it was January '94, and there was water sound, and water was running through the room here. We literally we're trying to figure out how do we just get our arms around what's in the building. So sitting here now, 30 years later and drinking a Shipyard Export Ale, it's amazing, and how many people's lives we've impacted, and how many have impacted Shipyard through the years, and how many people that have worked here, brewing it, coming in, and times we brew Pumpkinhead 5-6 times a day, to all the different iterations of this facility, and now to maximizing the tasting room and bringing in the ability to have large groups. It just creates such an environment of what's going to be next, and enjoy the moment. Right now, to be one of the top American craft beers, and pretty much at times one of the #1 craft beers in the UK, it's a huge accomplishment for our whole company and everybody involved. And you dream about something, that would be a dream come true, to be served in, on every major continent. And hopefully we'll get there in the next 30 years. I like to say we're not in the beer business, we live the beer business. And our goal is to continue to. I just want to say thank you to our staff, our crew, all our customers, all the people that have supported us over the years, the city of Portland, to the state of Maine, to all the people around the world that have drunk and supported Shipyard. Thank you for over 30 years of drinking with us, working with us, and supporting us. Cheers. Here's to 30 more.
My mom had sayings, right? So she had MS. She was a business person. She was a mother of 5, but most importantly, she was a leader, and she had sayings. And one of her sayings was, I once complained about not having shoes till I met a man with no feet. And that really was like, be quiet, do your job, get on with it. And then she had another saying about, for lack of a bolt, a tire was lost. For loss of that tire, the Jeep was lost. For loss of that Jeep, the battle was lost. For loss of that battle, the war was lost. So I get emotional because I can hear it right here. But so my dad, and some was a little more of a fun person. His life was more about, he was World War II, prison in the South Pacific, and he came back and started a home for veterans. But he liked his cocktails in the afternoon. He liked to gamble at the Elks Club, and but he never forgot the community and people and the veterans that he supported and was with, and that loyalty to the veterans was something that he instilled in us. But he did it in a fun way. He once told me a story about, in philosophy class, he was taking a test, and the question was why. And so everybody starts writing, and he thought to himself, why? And he goes, why not? And he walks up and turns the paper and heads out. So he was in medical school. He was in a bar with a bunch of his buddies, and a guy walked in. It was just after Pearl Harbor, and he asked the guy as a joke, how do we get in this fight? The guy said, well, come over here, sign up, and you'll be all set. So a week later, or 2 weeks later, he was shipping out, dropped out of medical school, and that kind of defined his life and his moments. And that kind of instilled in us, being the 4th of 5 kids, you learn from your brothers and sisters, and by the time I came along, they had run out of energy to figure out where we were and what we were doing. But the community of Gray, and a lot of towns in Maine, it really is a community. And the community, back when I grew up, nobody locked their house. And it was a true, I have a picture of Little League because I think back to all the volunteers and the people that gave to the community. And when I look at turning setbacks into success, it's really the communities we belong in and around that turn us around when we have a real challenge. Having dyslexia really was one of those things for me, in which the community, I was able to get a tutor who was a woman out of her farmhouse, Mrs. Whitney, and I would go see Mrs. Whitney on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I walk into her house, old farmhouse with a big stove, and you could smell the apple pie. And she'd say, well, if you do a good job, I'll give you a slice of apple pie. So you do a really good job, I'll give you vanilla ice cream on top. And it taught me the motivational thoughts of, okay, if you work hard, you'll achieve. And really, I think that's what life's about. You know, we didn't have a lot of money, but we had community and family. So fast forward, I got my real estate license when I was 18 years old, and I had the fortune of meeting a man named Gordon Herchebes. Yeah, I bought a building from him, and basically he had gotten a real estate deal in Kennebunkport, and that real estate deal failed. And he came to me, and I was working on my own, and said, "Would you be interested in helping me figure out why they're sending me demand notes for $4.5 million on a building that I'm supposed to be a limited partner in?" So I went down and met with at the time it was Bank North, and we worked out a deal to buy the mortgage, foreclose on it, and we had a vacant building in downtown Kennebunk in 1989, 1990. And I happened to take a trip to Pensacola, Florida. My brother Richie had this pub they went to called Mawari's Irish Pub, and then they added a brewery. We walked in there, Gordon, I, and Richard, and the place was hopping. So this is, remember, 1989. And I thought, geez, this would work in Kennebunk, Maine. So I got back, and I realized it, but Gritty McDuff's had just opened up. So I tried to get Richard and Eddie to go down there, and they actually introduced me to Alan Pudsley. And the real setback was sitting there figuring out, how do I get the city of Kennebunk to allow a brewery to go in a building that was only supposed to be retail? So we basically sat down, and the guy who was a young guy at the time, and he basically said, well, you really can't do it. It's not zoned. And I said, well, they're doing it all over the country. It's just starting. He said, well, think about it. How can we do it? Is there any retail? You sell beer out the front door? And I said, yeah. And he looks at me and goes, well, it's kind of like having a basket shop, right? You're making baskets in the back, and you sell baskets out the front, right? I said, yeah, we're going to make beer in the back, and we'll sell beer out the front. And so we went from a situation in which we got it approved, and then what we didn't realize was a restaurant wasn't legally approved upstairs. You weren't supposed to have a sit-down restaurant, Kettlebach at Federal Jack's at the time. So long story short, we had 30-seat takeout restaurant upstairs. And what I would do is I would take the seats and move them inside, and take the seats and move them outside, and we would stand up. And at the time, there's, Kennebunk Port was much busier than Kennebunk. So I'd have a woman out there in a lobster suit trying to wave people into Federal Jack's. And it was a lot of fun back then, but we were doing bands, and we were closing the place at night. And then all of a sudden we had a huge summer, and September hit. And then all of a sudden we're dead, completely quiet with Kennebunk. And I got a brewer, I've got all this equipment, I had $300,000. I said, how am I going to turn this around? And so my cousin Bruce had a bar at the Portland, and I tried to convince him to bring the beer in. But we got $3 dues to bring the beer in. I started delivering the beer in my S10 Blazer, and before you know it, we had 12 accounts. And I used to drink a beer in every account that I go into. And so it's started at a lot of rough delivery, 12 to 12 locations. So we basically, some people remember Nick Nappy, that owned Nappy Distributors. He showed up at the brewery one day, and he said, where's that Forster guy? And he said, you're going to let Nappy Distributors distribute this. And so long story short, that relationship between us and Nappy's, and then ultimately Pine State, these other great Maine companies, led to us growing. And then at the time, we were the fastest growing craft beer in the country in 1996, one of the fastest. And we partnered with Miller Brewing Company, which started American Specialty Craft Beer. And it went very, very well for about a year and a half. And we went to 2 Super Bowls. We went to all these events, and we did beer dinner for 600 people in Chicago. And then all of a sudden, what I didn't know was Philip Morris were wanting to sell Miller, and they fired everybody in the sales department and reorganized everything. Our beer went from 40,000 barrels down to 19,000 barrels. So all of a sudden, we're literally losing millions of dollars. And my partner's one of the biggest companies in the world, Philip Morris, owned by Miller. And basically, a gentleman named Dave Cardello came into town in March, and we ate at the old Port the old Port Tavern. I'll never forget. It was a foggy night, and said, "Hey, Freddie, if you bite your tongue and shut up, you'll get a chance to." It was hard for me to do, right? So, but we can just buy it back. So that was probably the biggest setback in our life, right there. So, okay, here I am. We're getting disgraced in the industry. I don't know if I want to be able to buy their half out or not. So for 2 years, we had shut my mouth and work through it, and we ultimately got a chance to buy it back. And then when we bought it back, we grew 30% a year for about till the year 2016. And since 2016, we've been gradually, the industry, we went from being like 90 brewers in the country to having like 7,000 brewers in the country. So we used to be able to ship beer to Connecticut without a salesman down there and sell enough beer to, basically we'd sell 30 or 40,000 cases. Then when all of a sudden Connecticut had all these other beers, local beers, it started to die. So recently we started to figure out, all right, we need to focus on a few things, and we can basically said, how are we going to take that major setback and survive? And we had to reorganize the company in a way that put us in a position to compete and really just focus nationally on one or two brands like Pumpkinhead and Sea Dog Blue Pond. Which brings me to the point about when you look at somebody and they say they're a success and they've done so well, and even when Tommy Walsh was with me those 3 days, he would tell me about all the things he had done wrong instead of all these great hotels he had. He's talking about this mistake, tough it was when he was up against it one winter in Florida. But here's a picture of pretty much all our, I would say, misses. I won't call them complete failures, but misses. And basically, if we had a brew pub in Winter Park, Florida, and it was just a tough situation with the landlord, and we ended up having to shut that down. And then Disney, outside of Disney, we had a Sea Dog. Don't ever compete with Disney. It's just a bad idea. And then we had 2 locations that were open just before COVID, one in Gulfport and one in South Portland, Maine. And both of those were great properties, great situation. It was just bad timing. And then we had a location in Clearwater, Florida. It was probably one of our nicest ever build-outs. But the day I showed up for the opening, there were tractor trailers and 3 or 4 dump trucks out front, and they shut down the highway, and they were doing a major renovation. And then they went broke in the middle of it. So it was 3 years of having the highway ripped up in front of us. I kept trying to make it work, but about 7 years later, we sold that property. And then down below are a number of we tried a live cafe, which was a great property. It just did not make money. And we've tried the coffee business. There's a few other failures we didn't have in here. Like we're in the pasta business. We're in a bunch of things. So the problem is I had a little bit of ADD. My wife Judy, that's her biggest issue with me, is I just cannot stop doing new things. So you got to keep trying and doing things. And we've done that with brands too, which, luckily we've got a few that have done well. But, one of the brands that I felt we really would have done well with is Tiesta Tea. And that was a tea beer that was a ready to drink, but it was just way too early. And in entrepreneurship, we talk about, location. You talk about timing. And with the Tiesta Tea, we got the timing wrong. And then you talk about the people you're involved in. And then you talk about persistence. And we've never really lacked persistence, but sometimes we should have maybe quit earlier and restarted later. But you just never know. But fortunately, we hit it out of the park on day one with Shipyard Export Ale. And I give Alan Pupsley a lot of credit for developing that beer. We did it as an export, which was similar to a Molson export that Canadians would like to drink if they came down to Kennebunkport. And that beer is basically the same beer we made 33 years ago. Then we came out with Shipyard Summer, and then the gods blessed us with Pumpkinhead. So Pumpkinhead is really one of those things in life. If you're fortunate enough, it takes care of all those other mistakes that you have made. So we've been very, very fortunate. We're sold throughout the country. There's only a few states we don't sell to there. And then I think at the end of the day, the biggest thing is the people that are involved in our company. And from day one, we've had some amazing people. And, I'll start with, my wife, Judy, and also start with my cousin, Bruce. I'd like our team to stand up and just who's in the audience that's involved with us. Rue Bunting's here, who's oversees all our restaurants, and the amount of energy and time that goes into all these different ventures, it's really endless hours that the team put in. Is Ken Hendrickson here? No. So Ken was the artist. His studio is below the Camden Sea Dock, and he's from the county. And Kenny was very creative, created some of our original sign, which became our original 22-ounce bottle. And he's in Camden underneath the Camden Sea Dock. He does original work that's taken from pictures, and he's got things in the Pentagon, and he's a Civil War historian. He's just an interesting guy to talk to. If we ever have the time, go check him out. And so the basic story of finding and meeting people that can change your life. I got lucky about 12 years ago. We had brewed Old Thumper under license from the Ringwood Brewery in Ringwood, England. And all of a sudden that company got bought. I thought we were going to lose the rights to brew it. And we didn't. In fact, they came to the U.S. A man named guy named James Coyle, and he and I hit it off playing golf. I'm a terrible golfer. Bruce is the golfer in the film. But at the end of the round, he basically said, "Would you brew Shipyard in the UK with us?" And it was like, I said, "Give me a minute." I said, "Yes, so I'll do that." So now Shipyard is like one of the top American craft beers in the UK. And I was saying, that on every bottle, pretty much every bottle, and most posters says Portland, Maine on it. Trying to do our part to promote Maine and Portland. But the people that are in this picture, over 33 years, we've probably had 7,000 people work for us, and right now I have over 900 people in the state of Maine working for us. And but what's new? What have you done lately? And that's what everybody always asks you, what's going on? And we're excited that we have a radio station called Shipyard Radio 207. John Shannon is he's on WPOR, and we've teamed up. We're featuring Maine artists, so if you want to listen to, there's like 30 Maine singers that are on that channel, and it'll evolve that. And then we also, with Rory Strunk and Homemade Studios, are working on a venture called State Stream, Stream State, which is a bunch of cameras that will be positioned around the state. We have one in Topsom, one in Camden Harbor, and one in Kennebunkport that changes position every 15 seconds. And we just teamed up with Channel 6, and hopefully that company will show video and historical videos and new videos of Maine, and that'll be a new venture. And then recently, I've basically been working on a podcast, which is kind of a fun one, and I was having a beer with Fred. And the reason there's beers on the tables, if you want, when I invite my daughter Jill up here, and we're gonna have a beer with Fred if you want. She's gonna ask us a few questions and a few questions.
It's the big question that everybody in the company loves to yell. How people have been fired.
Well, I was fired by the biggest company, well, one of the biggest companies, definitely the biggest tobacco company in the world, Philip Morris. And that was like devastating. Didn't know who would hire me at that point.
Sugar. The other question is, if you had to choose one project and most proud of, what would it be?
I think having the beer, as far as business goes, I think having the beer of the UK.
Okay.
Because I keep telling Bruce I'm selling more beer than he is in the UK, and I think honestly turning Federal Jacks around when Gordon and I are good friends for almost 4 years. That's part of podcast.
Do you want to tell everybody something on Oil Jackson?
So now my nephew, Ben Fitzpatrick, it's another proud moment is yesterday he sent me a picture of his son in there brewing. His son's a year and a half old. He's putting caps on the kegs. So we're starting that next generation up.
Couple years later. So we're gonna take a couple questions from the audience. Anybody has any questions?
Oh, Jesus. One of my favorite. One of my favorite employee. He's a volunteer, is he? No. Definitely Pumpkinhead Peas, one of my favorite employees.
Can you manage? Oh, yes, have any questions?
Hi, my name's Margot, and I just wanted to comment on the fact that I know that you have been asked over the years, Fred, in so many different ways to support the community, which you do with unbelievable stamina. So can you describe some of the things that you are involved with that support the community? And thank you for all of your support.
I was born in Mercy Hospital, and the Gary's House was a nonprofit. You know, just like how the Gary House forces the award recipients to stand up, because there's actually a few in the room here. We got Steve and I think so it's truthfully unique to have been born in a hospital and then have something like Gary's House. Gary Pike was a young man from Kennebunk, and at the time I wasn't really being accepted by the town of Kennebunk, and one of the gentlemen on the town council was Dave Shields, and he came to me and says, if you want to really have people accept you, you need to get involved in the community. And I think the biggest thing about everybody that's in hospitality, we get asked all the time to do this, do this, do this. And so he said it, and it really stuck with me. He says, if you don't give to them, they won't give to you. So we're very fortunate that we were able to build the Gary's House, and now people that are they have loved ones, they could go to Gary's House and stay there if their loved one is either in Mercy or one of the having challenges in Portland. So.
Hi, Fred.
Hey.
So I've known you for many years, and it's been a great, awesome working relationship on many levels. And we see all the different stages of businesses that you've established successfully, some not so much. But when we look at the future and the decline in consumption of alcohol beverages from the younger generation, what do you see in the future? What is your perception of what's next?
No, I don't think alcohol is going away. I don't think beer is going away, but it's definitely, I think people have to socialize. Everybody, I go take a sauna in the morning, and these young people walk in with earplugs in their ears, and they don't, and I always bug them and say, hey, how are you? Hey, how are you? And so eventually they get the fact that you have to communicate. And I think alcohol has been helping people feel a little bit relaxed and allowing themselves to have a little bit of a big time for centuries. And I don't think that's going to go away. I do think that, we're looking at non-alc drinks, non-alc beer. There's two young guys at UNE, they graduated UNE, they're hockey players. They created a drink called Underdone, and we're going to get involved in helping them. I think at the end of the day, people need to socialize. And I think the biggest danger our young people have, especially our young people, is they never had to depend on anybody else. If you want to get someplace, you can take an Uber. You don't have to call a buddy or a friend and say, hey, give me a ride. I laugh at the joke because that's what I do to her about So they don't let me drive, that's why. But no, I think that today, if you really think about it, people, they don't have to depend on each other like we did in Gray, Maine. We had to, we never had a babysitter. You go to the neighbor's house. Everything today, you can talk on your phone and get a result. So people get isolated. They get you. So, I do think celebrating with, the right amount of alcohol then is a great thing. It has been for many, many years. And the reality is, I don't think it's going to go away. I think balance is a good key. And we're looking at a lot of non-alc drinks. But at the end of the day, I don't think we'll never get out of the beer business.
Still thriving anymore, is so everybody else.
I think it's level. The beer business, beer consumption has not grown in America the whole time in the last 30 years, which is crazy. Now it seems to be going down. There's been $861 billion worth of value taken out of all the companies in the world in the last 4 years in liquor. And I think liquor and beer, and I think that it's going to level out, and it won't. It's never going to boom like it may have in the past, but people will realize, it's okay to have a few drinks. Don't cancel me, bro.
Any other questions?
Right.
Can you open in?
Right. That's all right. Great. I see some people have the THC beverages in the non-alcoholic menus. So, are you working on that? Are you building?
We have a beer pop here. It's a drink called Alt, and it's I partnered with a guy named Michael Dunn, who's out of Pennsylvania, but we're bottling it in Maine, or canning it in Maine, and it's a unique process of using water to extract the THC out of the. We'll do a 5 milligram and 10 milligram, and I only had a couple at Jill's house, and I got with trouble. But I honestly think in the restaurant business, especially, bartenders have been trained through tip training and other things, and we've been serving it in our restaurants, and most people are operated. There hasn't been any incidents that I've heard of. There been any, Jim? No, it's where, I think that, and this is the thing, we're over-regulated in every area of our world, and we're getting more and more regulated. And we, as an organization, I think have to push back. I don't think we should get in the insurance business in the state of Maine for paid family leave. I know a lot of you know how I feel about that, but well, I was going to talk about this, but what I mean by I think less regulation and more holding accountability of the people that are consuming and the people that are serving. But the fact that you can sell a hemp, they just passed the law in this recent one. They're going to give a year, and then they're going to regulate from the federal government side. But it's the first time the federal government has had anything at all to say about hemp. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there.
What advice would you give your younger self?
Go to law school. No, I think you don't need a college education. You don't need anything to go in the hospitality restaurant business. And I think the biggest thing I would do is try to surround myself with good people like I mostly have, and really look for the right opportunities with the right locations and the right situation. And then I would travel and see what's going well in other parts of the world and try to bring it back. And then I would say, go work in the business that you do. Before we were the Restaurant Association, now we're the Hotel and Restaurant Association. I just got on the board of the Florida Hospitality Board on the beaches, and serving with I think the big difference between Florida and Maine is they take a very aggressive political position. And I know we historically haven't done that in our organizations. We've done a little bit of it. I think I would say that anybody that gets into any business, you got to make sure they don't try to put you out of business and for whatever regulations they do. And I think I look at some of these younger kids opening up locations, and I think it's somehow we're going to have to make it easier for people to be in business, because we have 3 and 4 people just trying to figure out this paid family leave act, and it's crazy that we have to do that, and half the money's going to be set out of the state of Maine to some outside insurance company isn't in Selma. So people need to start talking about it in the state, talking to the local legislators, trying to get that straightened up, so that I and yourself, or anybody's younger self, could have a real opportunity, because Maine is a great hospitality state. I think we are never been in a better position to be in the hospitality business in the state of Maine. People want to come to Maine. It's amazing. I mean, even a dead pitch black on Sunday night in the old port, there's activity and the people are speaking different languages. These people weren't here 10, 12, 20 years ago. And, you know, Alex Gray's here with what he's done in Bangor, Maine with that amazing facility that brings people to Maine. And University of Maine RL system spending money and these great colleges, but it's made, you know, Augusta's making a lot more difficult, these young people, and we need to push back. We need, as a whole organization, we need to try to get younger people involved in Augusta, make sure we can do business in our region. Because there's going to be more disposable income. There's going to be more with AI, and people have more time in the hand. They want experiential activities. And, you know, every one of these towns that never was a tourist town will become one. Bangor will be a tourist town. You know, I think all these little towns, you know, that weren't really here with Scott, or we were talking about the Pumpkin Festival. And, you know, I want to give a shout out to our Sean McCarthy, who's here, who is with Guided Marketing. And he and the team won the dual pumpkin float thing. It was on the New York Times and a couple other national stations at Damascotta, Maine, with the largest pumpkin. He was hanging out there too, so yeah, it's a tiny thing. So I mean, you joke about it, like, but I honestly believe it's the best time to be starting a business, hospitality business in Maine, provided we can right some of the craziness that have been thrown on us. You keep throwing us acres.
Any other questions?
Thank you. Hi, I'm Maria Pierce from Words from the Woods. We're a marketing and advertising agency. And a lot of our clients come to us and they've got a brand that is strong and maybe was one of the first in the category, but then they see that it becomes more and more crowded. And as a company that fits that exact profile and is that face that maybe even more than most, I'd love to hear your perspective on how you make sure you stay competitive and relevant as more and more competition enters the field.
Yeah, I think in today's world, to be honest, that's one of the reasons why I'm doing Beer with Fred, because it's a global platform. And I used to have basically every account in the city of Portland would have our beer. And now I might have 30 or 40% of them. So it's tough because and then you say, okay, well, how can I differentiate myself in other markets? And with like a Pumpkinhead, nobody could do it as well. So we knew that if we focused on that, we would win. But I do think you can't underestimate social media, and you can't building a bigger community. I think you have to be a self-marketer today, because there's no way you could pay for paid media at the level you need to. Although I love Spectrum and all that, but you know, at the end of the day, people have to have. If you have a brand and it's really you believe in it. George Denny was a friend of mine with Go On Shoe, and he just really focused on the most comfortable, high quality shoe. And if we can keep Shipyard Export the same, and we could keep Pumpkinhead, and we can come out with 1 or 2 beers. We want to do this new beer called Nitro, American Pale Ale, and we want to be able to put it in a can, and we think we're always there. So we're always going to keep categorized, but I think at the end of the day, you have to, your company has to employ its employees and everybody from the marketing company down to pick a lane, especially with overcrowding. I don't know a category more overcrowded than beer. Is there one that you know of?
That's probably my best.
But I mean, at the end of the day, people have to be satisfied when they get done that beer, but to buy another. If you can't do that, it's not marketing. It's like in a product quality. And that's tough. That's a tough thing to do. And, you know, I get more nervous about the future, because I think that the things that you can't control are costs and overhead and extra costs. And those are the things that scare me more than probably marketing of it. But yeah. Because beer, you can only charge so much for beer. And the cost of, the nice thing, gas prices coming down, that may help us and help the whole industry. But, at the end of the day, I think social media, targeted social media, and other aspects.
Any other questions? Me?
What's your favorite bar moving Pete's been in?
It was one. He almost got us in a little trouble. He might still be in a little trouble. Let's run it.
Gosh, I think it's gonna be a girl. All right, what do you think it's gonna be? A boy or a girl? All right, guys, ready to count down? 3, 2, 1.
We have like something during music. Let's go to YouTube, Fred Forza on YouTube. Please subscribe. They're gonna feed my daughter.
Thank you.